Mr. Speaker, I'm here today firstly because of the blessings of the Almighty God, with whom all things are possible. And I fervently pray for his continued mercy and wisdom. Mr. Speaker, I must thank the opposition leader, the Most Honourable Portia Simpson Miller, for giving me the opportunity to serve in my capacity as a member of the Opposition Spokesperson Council. I salute her quality of leadership, optimism about our future, and unquestionable commitment to creating an environment that enables the Jamaican people to be the best they can. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to recognize the presence of members of my family who have always been there for me through thick and thin. To the extent that I am able to meet the unending demands of public life is due in no small part to their sacrifice, especially my darling wife. Mr. Speaker, it is a most fulfilling experience to work with and for the people of Eastern Westmoreland. My constituency executive, cluster managers, youth leaders, women's movement, NGOs and ministers fraternal, the educators and other stakeholders for the progress and development of the constituency. Mr. Speaker, I want to especially salute my colleagues who serve as councillors in my constituency. Councillor Valence Gifford of the White House Division, Councillor Seabert McFarlane of the Leamington Division, Councillor Danry Delancey, Deputy Mayor of Savannah Lamar, Councillor of the Betheltown Division, Councillor Trevor Jamieson, Councillor of the Darlaston Division, and Mr. Speaker, Councillor Jamieson is not going back to the polls, and Councillor in waiting, Jerome Bacchus, is also here with us today. Mr. Speaker, their quiet counsel and loyal support have made me what I am today. Mr. Speaker, their invaluable guidance in terms of putting various projects on the table and having it walk successful paths are the planks I stand on in my constituency. Mr. Speaker, with each passing day, I become more indebted to my personal staff members and volunteers who continue to allow me to tax the utmost, seemingly boundless reserves and patience, energy, and patriotism that they have. I demand a lot only because I know they are equal to the task. Mr. Speaker, here I want to join my colleagues on both sides of this honourable House in recognizing your experience in the House, the authority and dignity which you bring to the office as Speaker, and to our proceedings in this honourable House in keeping with the fine traditions of former Speakers. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, in the last 4 years, the constituency of Eastern Westmoreland has seen many improvements in various sectors. Our vision for the constituency is to focus on holistic development and empowerment for our people. This, Mr. Speaker, must include hard areas such as physical infrastructure, but must include soft areas such as education and small business development. We, Westmoreland Eastern, do not consider meaningful assistance to our constituents to be handouts. On the contrary, we are there to give the less fortunate a hand up so they themselves can say farewell to welfare. That is what we call empowered. Simply put, Mr. Speaker, to quote the most honorable Portia Simpson Miller, we must balance the books while balance people's lives. Mr. Speaker, on water, some $473.5 million was spent on the expansion of water lines in various communities. On health, some $101 million was spent to improve healthcare facilities to include the Center of Excellence in Darlaston. On roads, Mr. Speaker, some $2 billion was spent in general improvements of road to include the White House, to $2 billion to include the White House leg of roads. Mr. Speaker, several programs were executed to develop small businesses and agro-processing in the constituency. But, Mr. Speaker, education is important, and as such, several projects were conducted as to the expansion of the Belmont Academy, construction of the Belmont Basic School, Cedar Valley Basic School, St. John's Infant Library, and I could go on and on, Mr. Speaker. Other noteworthy projects, Mr. Speaker, include the initiation of regularization of informal settlements, completion of land titling process for Darlaston.
I wish to hear Mr. Buchanan, and I wish you hear him quietly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that is a solid track record of achievement, and I thank the people of Eastern Westmoreland for rewarding the work by returning me as their representative to this august body, and the work continues. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the issue of housing. Mr. Speaker, one of the significant challenges faced by successive governments is that of housing Jamaica's population. This has been a perennial problem which has consistently worsened since the 1950s. The only major dent we have made in addressing this challenge in a sustained manner was the establishment of the National Housing Trust in 1976. Mr. Speaker, the trust has facilitated the construction of over 94,000 houses directly and the provision of approximately 180,000 individual benefits up to 2014. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica housing challenge is not simply about the size of the housing deficit and the diverse needs of the inadequately housed, but also the social ills manifested by the negative environments in which families are raised. It is the view of the opposition that a fundamental objective of any progressive society must be the provision of decent housing for all its people. In addition to the creation of policies that lead to the construction of housing solutions, Mr. Speaker, we must protect tenants also from unscrupulous landlords and ensure that rentals are maintained at levels which are affordable and that tenants are not subjected to unreasonable evictions. Mr. Speaker, this is a bold objective which carries with it sacred commitment to our people, and to fulfill it may require bold interventions. Mr. Speaker, in a market economy, some will say the government should not intervene in the market. However, I disagree. The right to affordable housing is a human right. No society can be wholesome unless it properly houses its people. Government, therefore, Mr. Speaker, has the power, and may I say the responsibility, to intervene as necessary to protect the vulnerable. We cannot create a wholesome society if we do not create healthy communities. And we certainly cannot create healthy communities if families are living in squalor with poor provisions of social services and infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, the time for another revolution on the housing problem is now. If we fail to address this growing crisis, we will reap the results in the whirlwind. Mr. Speaker, Jamaica's population is estimated at some 2.7 million and is projected to reach 2.9 million by 2030. In the 2001 census, it was indicated that the annual population growth rate between 1991 and 2001 was 0.9%, while that figure for the growth rate of the urban population was 1.42%. This clearly highlights the urban drift in our society, which deepens our housing problem. No doubt, this urban drift has worsened since 2001. Mr. Speaker, it is established that the average annual formal production of housing units is 4,400 per annum and 5,635 per annum for informal units. It has been also deduced that an average of 5,000 of the informal production was due to squatting. As a result of these realities, it is estimated that squatting stands at approximately 20% of our population. That is 1 in every 5 dwellings, Mr. Speaker. It means that persons have invested in assets which they do not have real hold on, don't have a title. This makes investment unbankable. Therefore, it is dead capital, and they cannot use it as collateral to raise money at a financial institution. In addition, these communities have little or no infrastructure and no proper access to social services. Mr. Speaker, this phenomenon of informal communities must represent one of the most urgent social and economic challenges we face as a country. Mr. Speaker, despite all the attempts at solving our housing challenges, the creation of agencies such as the NHD, JMB, HAJ, and programs such as slum clearance schemes in the 1960s, sites and services in 1976, sugar industrial housing in 1975, joint venture program in 1974, Operation Pride in 1994, Relocation 2000 in 1999, Inner City Housing Project in 2005. We do not now have any major housing initiative to address Jamaica's chronic housing shortage. And Mr. Speaker, we would have noted the years of such interventions. In fact, Mr. Speaker, there is no formal national housing policy adopted by the government of Jamaica. This is a dereliction of our duties. And I'm calling on the Minister of Housing, who happens to be our most honorable Prime Minister, to urgently complete the work we advanced as a government when we were there and table before this honorable House the draft national housing policy such that we can tackle this housing challenge in a transparent, systematic, and bipartisan manner. Prime Minister, for the first time in a very long time, the same minister's responsibility for all the critical agencies that tackle housing, namely the NHD, JMB, HAJ, and the Ministry of Housing. PM, you therefore have no excuse in not comprehensively addressing this matter. as there's nowhere to hide, nowhere to run, and the buck stops with you now. Mr. Speaker, I have seen and heard a number of comments recently addressing the housing challenge we face as a country. I welcome those comments, as it is these type of robust data-driven and evidence-based debates that usually give birth to good policy. But interestingly, two persons can look at the same data and arrive at two different conclusions. So while I must commend the recent efforts of the think tank Capri on their assessment of NHT, I cannot in any good progressive sense agree with some of their conclusions. You see, Mr. Speaker, initial analysis within the Ministry of Housing suggests that at least 9,000 units per annum are needed to be built between now and 2030. To satisfactorily address our housing shortage, this does not include an estimated 3,750 squatter replacements unit, which is due to faulty and inadequate construction of dwellings. For this to be a reality, Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt that the NHT will have a critical role to play in providing affordable financing to contributors. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, unless one is proposing that the status quo is desirable and it can be business as usual, one could not reasonably argue for a reduction in the contribution to the NHT, whether it is by the employee or the employer. On the contrary, we should be looking at ways that the poorer contributors to the NHT can benefit from the facility by designing more innovative mortgage technical innovations, such as a cap price level adjusted mortgage, which reduce the effect of inflation, or aggressively pursuing starter units that contributors can expand progressively, or ways of formally including remittance as a source of income for mortgage repayment and housing investment. Mr. Speaker, we also cannot agree that the NHT should remove itself from the supply side of the housing market. This latter point, along with that of reducing NHT contributions, are unprogressive and will serve to stifle the dream of home ownership of thousands of Jamaicans by confining them to the ranks of squatters and perpetual and eternal rent-paying dwellers. And, Mr. Speaker, whilst the opposition acknowledges that the NHT should increase availability of affordable housing units for rent, we equally and fervently believe in enabling every Jamaican dream of turning their own key in their own house. Mr. Speaker, the solutions to Jamaica's housing problems are not as far-fetched and daunting as they are made out to be. It is not about a lack of ideas or answers. It is about a lack of priority, will, and consistent and efficient execution. I recommend the following, therefore. 1, undertake efforts to improve availability of mortgage financing by reviewing the role of the Jamaica Mortgage Bank as a secondary mortgage provider as originally chartered, a role they are not now playing as envisaged. 2, provide legislation or regulation or policy guidance so that more innovative mortgage products may be unleashed to the market. 3, expand mechanisms such as starter housing program so poorer contributors to the NHT can own a home. 4, increasing funding to the housing agency, as well as pursue a partnership between the NHT and the housing agency to enable the development of more affordable housing solutions. 5, implement ongoing informal settlement infrastructure upgrading and titling program. Mr. Speaker, I could go on and on. I could go on and on. But I will leave room for the government to develop some of the answers. I can't give you everything. Mr. Speaker, I now look at the concept of rural development. Mr. Speaker, the concept of rural development is a quite comprehensive, because of Warmington. Mr. Speaker, the concept of rural development is a quite comprehensive and elaborate one. In fact, rural development in its simplest form envisages a long-term process of transforming the lives of people living in rural areas on both social and economic levels. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I heard the conversation and I heard the minister's announcement about the urban renewal program. But, Mr. Speaker, let me just say that the issues concerning rural development manifests itself and demands of us that we provide improvement of the standard of living for rural folk through the provision of proper health facilities, employment opportunities, including vocational training, educational facilities, affordable housing, and access to infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, today, many of our social and economic challenges as a country are as a result of our rural-urban drift, both inter-parish and intra-parish. Mr. Speaker, this drift is really about mankind's natural pursuit of opportunity. It is man's quest for survival. This reality contributes to the informal housing crisis to which I referred earlier. Mr. Speaker, there are a range of social and economic issues that are affecting rural development in Jamaica today. 1, social issues. A, limited access to infrastructure and basic services. B, housing quality. C, low levels of access to skills training, education, and primary health care. And, Mr. Speaker, increasing incidents of crime and violence. Mr. Speaker, secondly, the economic issues. High levels of poverty, lower levels of economic development, high dependence on agriculture, poor road conditions, especially farm roads, Mr. Speaker, and a lack of access to requisite financing. Mr. Speaker, on the matter of farm roads, Mr. Speaker, I eagerly await the resumption of the farm road program we began through the Rural Development Committee established by the most honorable Prime Minister then, Portia Simpson Miller. Because, Mr. Speaker, we left monies there, and I am saying to the government, we eagerly await the resumption of this program, the farm road program. Mr. Speaker, planning for rural development in independent Jamaica goes as far back as 1964. Mr. Speaker, rural development remains important as a large portion of the population still live in rural areas. Early studies emphasize more traditional explanations for rural underdevelopment, such as shortage of investment capital, high birth rate, soil erosion. But more recent explanations focus on structural factors. They include weak integration between sectors, insufficient investments, inadequate planning, and allocation of resources, unproductive cultural habits, fragmented governance, and weak implementation. Mr. Speaker, as a bona fide countryman representing a rural constituency, bona fide countryman, rural development is near and dear to my heart. Recently, I was perusing the Vision 2030 document, as I do from time to time, and specifically the chapter dealing especially with this area, Mr. Speaker. As a matter of fact, the 2030 vision calls for vibrant and diversified rural areas, whereby there is a process of creating and giving high priority to rural development. It sees rural development as one of the engines of growth of the national economy. Mr. Speaker, high-level plan proposes. The high-level plan proposes the development and implementation of strategies to create economically viable and socially stable rural areas where there is accessible social amenities for all, and there are systems in place that fosters growth and development. Mr. Speaker, over the years, what is noticeably a fundamental flaw of planning for rural development is the lack of a coordinated planning infrastructure. As a result, there are a number of legislations that are outdated and will not address the issues that are facing us in modern-day Jamaica today. Successive administrations have pursued many planning initiatives. The main ones include 2030 National Development Plan 2009, National Physical Plan 1978-1989, the Sustainable Rural Development Policy Final Report, PIOJ Report, May 2004, sectoral plans of the 2030 NDP, parish development plans or local sustainable development plans, regional plans, town plans, development areas, community priority plans, poverty maps, community profile asset maps. The development of these plans is led by MDAs and citizens' bodies. Main among them are Planning Institute of Jamaica, parish councils, parish development committees, Social Development Commission, ministries, for example, the Tourism Master Plan, Business Strategic Plan, Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, agencies such as the NHT and NWC. Mr. Speaker, there are many questions which arise. Where are these plans now? When last have they been updated in the face of new information? How many of these plans are being implemented? Who is the main driver to ensure there is integrated rural development? Are we satisfied that the status quo is sufficient to get us where we want to go? To that last question, as a bona fide countryman speaking on behalf of rural folks, Mr. Speaker, the answer is a resounding no. Mr. Speaker, given the importance of rural development to the national economy, I am calling on the Most Honourable Prime Minister to take up, dust off, to update and to implement the rural development plan that was launched by the Most Honourable Portia Simpson Miller 3 years ago. I am further calling on the Prime Minister to not just name a growth czar, but also to name a czar for rural development. You see, Mr. Speaker, we do not want to see a lopsided growth. We want growth where rural folk are.
Leader of the members, Time for speaking is extended. Members, I wish to hear the leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the members' time be extended by 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
The question is that the members' time be extended by 5 minutes. Those in favour? Those against? Ayes have it. Mr. Buchanan?
Mr. Speaker, as I was saying, we want growth where rural folks are empowered, not just to have to come to Kingston for opportunities, thereby reducing quality of life and compounding the housing problem. Mr. Speaker, as I start, I am suggesting that this ZAR focuses on completing all the development plans for the various parishes. This plan should be long-term, multi-sectoral, and deals with land use designations, housing, transportation, waste management, the natural environment, energy, water, mining, tourism, agriculture, social services and community participation, and local governance with principles of sustainability. Mr. Speaker, we can all agree on some obvious strategies that are required. 1, investment in basic services and infrastructure. 2, access to water and waste disposal for all communities. 3, access to affordable housing through various financing mechanisms. 4, development or developing a housing policy that deals with housing settlements, rental market, and housing for people with special needs. Promotion of agriculture, agro-processing, creative industries, and microfinance mechanisms. Mr. Speaker, in closing, it is clear to me that it is time for action to comprehensively address Jamaica's housing challenge. It is time for action to upgrade our informal settlements and reduce squatting once and for all. It is time for action in providing more opportunities for our poorer NHT contributors so they too can own a home. It is time for action to table national housing policy in this honourable House. It is time for action, Mr. Speaker, in not just talking about rural development, but to appoint a ZAR who is accountable to the Prime Minister so we can focus on integrated rural development. Mr. Speaker, I truly believe if we really intend for Jamaica to be the place of choice to live, work, raise our families and do business, then rural development will become the area of main focus. Otherwise, we are being insincere and just playing with words by paying lip service to rural development. Mr. Speaker, the time for action is now. Over to you, Prime Minister. The ball is in your court. But Mr. Speaker, finally, I close with one advice to the Cabinet, that it is human to err, but it is devilish to remain willfully in error. I thank you.